Welcome everyone to the Sacred Self-Healing meeting. My name is Yona Brindis and I'm the owner and founder of transCODES, and next to me is
Jeff Casper. I'm the founder of Self-Unification, and we welcome you all here, of course. We're very excited to have you here and to start the process.
We have a panel guest today. Roger is the director of the remote prayer group and also coach at transCODES for most of our modalities. For the most part, at this point, Jeff and I will be talking, and we will be interviewing Roger in a little bit. But the idea really is for everyone to share, or for everyone who wants to share. So you have the option to just listen or raise your hand. There's like a little raise or like a little hand icon that indicates to us that you would like to speak. You can do this at any time during the meeting. We'll just sort of end the sentence or whatever it is that we talk about and then come to you. Most importantly, you can ask questions at any time.
Right.
And there is a function there where you can use the sort of the anonymous texting function where we receive a text with your question and then we just read it out loud without your name and answer it. Or you ask the question yourself through the microphone. This is completely up to you. So yes, like I mentioned in the beginning, not all of you are on step 6 yet, which is great. I've said that already. We want this. We want people to come to the meetings regardless of where they are in the process. This is all about our personal journey. Some of the lessons, some of the steps will be very familiar to you. They'll go very easy. You'll have an understanding of this already. And some of them will be a little harder. You will probably have resistance all the way to like physical resistance to even listening to a step. So all this is part of the process. And when you get stuck on a step, you get this question asked all the time. Just move on. If you only listen to it a few times and you really don't get anywhere, or you really don't want to read the workbook, we get questions regarding that as well. Don't worry about it. This is not about completing or mastering. This is about you going through a process. And at some point in your journey, you'll be prompted to go back to that step. And then just know that you have it. You have it there. You have a workbook there with exercises. You have a meditation there. And then you take the time to work on this particular resonance a little later. So don't worry about that at all. Like in all meetings, I'm going to just sort of summarize the step. It doesn't matter if you've already done this step or not. And then we go straight into it means to us. And then Jeff will interview Roger. You see what I have on my screen right now, and those are the workbook pages. So as I'm talking about things, I'll just move the pages, but there's no real presentation for the meetings. Ultimately, we just want to talk and discuss. Right. I want to start the summary of step 6 with a quote from the workbook, and this to me kind of says it all. If you knew better, we would do better. And in order to know better, we need to understand first. And this may sound a little mental. Yeah, some of our journey is about educating ourselves, learning new things, and beginning to understand. But for the most part, it's more about experiencing. Most of you guys already have a really good understanding of spirituality, metaphysics, and all these concepts. So it's not really about educating you. It's more about understanding and internalizing what these things really mean, what these principles really mean. And in that regards, step 6 is a very important step. It basically introduces all the key concepts, all the spiritual principles that we work with. It first talks about being a soul with a body versus being a body with a soul, which is just sort of a slight tilt, of our understanding. But if we can see ourselves as souls that exist eternally, then it helps us to detach a little bit from our body, not in the sense of neglecting it, but in the sense of understanding that this incarnation, this physical embodiment that I have right now, is just a temporary state. And as you know, in energy work, we look at all states of energy just as temporary, fleeting moments that can be changed, that can be transformed. And so the understanding of ourselves as a soul with a body means to us that we can change anything. But the part in us that is unchanging is our soul. So our journey really is all about the journey back to, or as close to, our soul. That's how we see this. So the word soul is quite a spiritual word, and for some people it has a religious connotation. As always, I have to repeat this because there are some misunderstandings sometimes. We do use spiritual terminology or religious terminology simply because in this field of energy work, metaphysics, there really isn't a unified lingo yet. So we use words like divine consciousness, Christ consciousness, Christ light, because we think that they fit the best. That doesn't always mean that we agree with the connotation or the meaning that religions give to them. This step in particular addresses our spiritual understanding. And I just want to emphasize that when we talk about spirituality, we're not necessarily talking about religion at all. Most of us are deeply spiritual, but do not belong to any church, or do not see ourselves as a member or worshiper of a particular religion. That doesn't mean that we have problems with it or reject it or anything or contradictions. It just means that, we see our way of spirituality in a more free way, in a more independent way. And most of the steps have the purpose of reminding us that higher power resides within us. So in that, we have divinity within us. That's where we can find that. It doesn't exclude, beliefs that there's a God or anything outside of us, but we need to become aware, and this is why I quoted this sentence. We need to become aware that when we see our inner divinity or divinity as something outside of us, that we also given away a lot of power. So a big part of self-healing is to acknowledge, to find, and to reintegrate our divinity within, as a power within ourselves. Another one of the key concepts that's introduced in this step is the dissolution of ego, or the intention thereof. So it's not like that ego is the adversary of our inner divinity, but it is part of our body, of our physical existence. It helps us to survive. It has a lot of cool functions and important purposes. But when it comes to evolving our consciousness, it can be in the way sometimes. And basis of this course is that we have observed that ego can be like an addiction. So energetically, it shows the exact same properties. It shows the exact same sort of energetic mechanisms in people as a substance addiction. So that's why we just treat it as an addiction. And by doing that, we're allowing it to be. So it's not like we want to eradicate our ego. We just need to learn better ways to handle it and to not allow it to dominate our energy or our feelings, our emotions, our body. So that's the whole purpose of the dissolution of the ego. Another key concept in this step is the difference between mind and consciousness. So with this step, we're kind of introducing the idea that whatever it is that we thought our consciousness was so far, was most likely our mind. And mind is something that, exists in a field also, but it's a limited field. So it's not something bad or anything. It's an ongoing process. Practices like meditation, contemplation, trance states, dreaming, that can help us sort of to harness our thinkingness a little bit. But we can't really turn off our mind. Just like ego, it's part of our physical existence and it has great tools and a cool purpose. But sometimes we want to access the higher abilities through our consciousness, and then our mind can be in the way. So a lot of this journey is about the journey from the mind to the heart, and that will repeat throughout the steps. The next one is the sort of the practical meaning of this, in which we introduce the idea of or the differentiation between reacting versus or responding versus reacting. So what it allows us to move away from our mind into our heart, and through that beginning to access our divine consciousness, is that it allows us to see things in a larger context. So we're not that hooked on the content anymore, on our emotions that are going on, our physical reactions, on our critical thinking. It's like zooming out of a scene with a camera into a broader perspective, and that is what the divine consciousness or our divine consciousness can do for us. In practical terms, it allows us to observe situations to the point where we are able, or we become able, to respond rather than to react. Reaction is very often programmed, conditioned, and so forth. There's many different levels of programming that we are bound by, collective programming, family programming, ethnic backgrounds, but also karmic stuff. So if we want to break out of all of these things at once, accessing our divine consciousness is basically the way to releasing all those things that bind us to our ego, to our mind, and to our reactions. Then, of course, we stretch the importance of the Sacred Heart as a pathway, and how breathing through the heart is the exercise that we use. And this will come back to you in almost each and every step. So breathing through the heart is one of those really core energy work modalities that we want to become familiar with. And I would like to hope that everyone kind of, wherever you are in your journey, has somewhat of a feeling as to how it feels like when you breathe through your heart. But know that the entire course is basically built on us learning how to breathe through our heart. And this is a symbolic sort of way of saying that we center all our energies in our heart rather than in our mind, in our head, or our bellies, our emotions. So the whole goal is to make you feel comfortable with changing or shifting your awareness out of your ego's perspective into the higher perspective of your innate divine consciousness.
And go ahead. And I would just say two things. That the first one, because I know it when I first got into working with some things like this a few years back, probably 10 or 15 now, that idea of breathing through the heart really confused me. I was way too mental. I have a lot of history and background in anatomy, and I was like, that's not possible. So it really threw me for a loop. But it's an energetic feeling that as you continue to do the work, so if you've just started or that really is confusing to you or it makes you kind of uncomfortable, just let that be. As you do the meditation steps, as you really begin to work on some of the techniques that are in those and some of the energetic experiences, you all of a sudden begin to feel that. And that's hard sometimes to acknowledge, but just by practicing that thought process along with your breathing and the meditations, all of a sudden you're going to start to feel your energy center in your chest. and you're going to feel it expand and open as you breathe in and out. And that's basically what you're going to start to feel. That's one way. So don't let that bother you if that's really confusing at first or kind of challenging, because it'll come. And then the other thing that Yona talked about is this ability to not go into reaction and to be able to have that space. And that's kind of what you're doing. You're retraining your system. And that's what I really liked about this step and many of them, is that it creates that ability Yona and I talk about sometimes, called the gap. You have a gap where you used to have a reaction. So now what this step can do, and then the other steps combined and the whole package can do, is that it gives you that time to go, okay, I'm going into reaction now. I'm going into an emotion. And you may not even have that at first. You just may feel that space. And that's what you're doing. You're retraining your entire system, your energetic system, your mental system, your physical system, the entire energetic being to a different way. And that's what Yona talked about. It's just, that's how I see it, is there's a gap you create. And then that gap, you can even start to reflect upon yourself in the moment. And that's when you can really start to see your patterns. And it gets kind of, it can be very entertaining. When I first started doing that, I'd start laughing at myself inside because I couldn't believe how angry I'd get or how guilty I'd become or how reactive I was. But that's the whole process that you're doing. You're retraining. Like Yona said, you're going from the mind to the emotions, or both, your ego, whatever you want to use there, your shadow, whatever, into the heart space. And there's actually a bit of research on that, how it actually develops and changes the entire, not only your brain chemistry, but your entire chemistry of your body. And as you become more and more aligned to that, more and more changes. It's a beautiful process. And, at some point we'll probably get that information out there, but there's a lot out there on that.
Before we go into the interview with Roger, I want to bring something up that has sparked a little bit of discussion here at home between Jeff and I, and that is also and that is also sometimes part of the personal coaching sessions that I have with you. The question of whether you need the workbook or not is pretty simple to answer. The workbook is there to assist you in your expansion. And part of your expansion, because your ego and your mind still is a part of you, is to basically get your mind on your side. Okay, you don't want your mind to be like your enemy, because then you just have this sort of inner conflict, this inner schism going on that makes it really hard for you to overcome resistances. So the workbook very often has the sole purpose of allowing your mind to sort of agree with what you're doing on an energetic level. The meditations are really the core of each step as they work with your energy, regardless of your understanding. But trust me, it becomes a lot easier if you can get your mind to agree with the work that you're doing. So some of the steps are a little more mental than other steps. And you will find out even the meditation. Sometimes we ask questions in the meditations, and there's a reason for that. Okay? Can you skip the workbook? Absolutely. And sometimes you will feel that the questions that are asked or the exercises in the workbook are really kind of outdated for you, that you've already kind of moved, not beyond that, but that you've already answered those questions for yourself. And don't feel like you have to turn in your answers for grading. This is all up to you. If those questions, don't really trigger anything in you anymore other than, okay, I'm aware of this, then that probably means you don't need those questions anymore. But the reason why we put these questions in there is because most of us have a really good sort of overall understanding, but when it goes into detail, we never really go there, and so the questions are a little bit, there to call out your ego. So if you feel an ego reaction with the questions, then you're on the right path. If you feel like kind of nothing and you feel like sort of in harmony with the question and you can answer that in your mind right away, that's it. That's all you need to know. And again, like I said in the beginning, some steps will feel like easy peasy and some steps will be really hard. And that is because each and every one of us has a different timeline, has a different aspects that still need to be worked through. And sometimes we kind of have to let a step go if the resistance is too much, and wait till we get prompted to go back to it. The discussion that is going on here between Jeff and I, and this, I really, enjoy sharing this with you, is there a shortcut? Do we really need those 24 steps and meditating every day for a year? That's like a long process. Well, that's kind of like a discussion I would like to spark. And if you would like to raise your hand to give you 2 pennies to this, all I can say is that by the end of this course, you will know why there are so many steps. Because for the most part, it takes us years, if not decades, to go through these layers of ego and energy. Sometimes even a whole lifetime. And so by compiling it into these sort of reproducible, duplicatable steps, we are really putting together a life's journey here. Is there a shortcut? Well, I'm in a position where I'm supposed to say, well, there isn't. But if you want to know how to get there the fastest, it's probably this step. This step has all principles and all tools you really need to learn how to be in your heart, how to discern from your heart, how to know what's true to you, and how to make decisions based on your heart. So if you would like to join this discussion right now, you can raise your hand, and don't worry if it takes you a while to figure this out. We'll take your opinion even a little later into the meeting.
I have one thing to say. I'm backing up here a bit, just real quick, because it came in a few minutes ago. On the workbook, if you're not the type to read it, that's okay. But step 7 and 8, do.
Thank you.
Do, because that one, if you skip it, it will...
well, you're going to have to go back to it anyway.
Exactly.
Because other steps refer to it.
So those are the only ones, because it's a very important step of self-reflection, and that's all I'll say because some of you aren't there. If you're going to pick 2 to read, start with those when you get to those, because those, it's almost paramount to do those 2. Because by doing that, I know Yona's talking about that this step, you can do it by yourself, and it does do a lot for you. But if you're going to go into self-reflection, those 2, take the time.
They're the main tools.
Yeah, take the time, and it's some of the most challenging work you're going to deal with. But I'll tell you right now, from personal experience, if I wouldn't have done that,
it would have been half-ass.
Well, half-ass, and you delay yourself. You delay months, years, decades. So that's all I'll say on that. But I know some people, it's really, I've read I don't know how many books in my life, so sometimes I get really challenging to read, but I'd recommend those 2.
Yeah, another tool that I would like to recommend, regardless of where you're at and where you want to be, is learning about your inner energy. Learn about your chakras, or the chakra clearing weekends, for instance, that I do, are very helpful in just sort of getting into this energetic contact with yourself. Learn how to identify your inner signaling, learn your body signals, learn your inner cues. Those are things that you have with you. It's like a language. It's the language of your consciousness. So learn that. Build an inner lexicon of signals so that you can use this navigation from your heart at any point in your life.
No one wants to talk.
No one wants to talk. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, they usually warm up right at the end of session, right, when we have 2 minutes left. I'm not making fun. I know how hard this is, and I'm really grateful for everyone who's joining. So
yes,
it's awesome that you take this opportunity, because I don't know for how long we're going to do this. We may just go through each step and then turn it over to facilitators, because there's a few of you who've already announced that they would be interested in facilitating the groups, because we the ultimate vision or plan is to have actually physical groups. So we're just probably going to go through each step once. Yes, and for a deeper look into sort of how our spiritual path influences our journey, we've invited Roger today. So apart from the fact that, of course, we work with Roger almost every day, and sorry for keeping you busy with this every day. Roger, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. The reason why we like to have panel guests there is because, for one, I'm sure you guys are getting tired of our voices, but Roger has a really beautiful view of his divinity, and it's something that Roger, I'm gonna make you feel like blushing right now, but some of us have come such a far way, such a long way, and you're definitely one of them, where the beauty of your process and your journey is it's touching me. So I'm very grateful for you being there and for being willing to speak.
Thank you, Yona. It's your persistence that has gotten me this far,
Your own persistence.
I was just going to say, are you saying that I'm a pain in the ass?
You're good at pulling people forward into their stuff.
Well,
let me put it that way.
You also bring a really cool background with it, because the work we do is heavily based on self-help groups, and some of the 12-step work out there. So you have, like you said in your intro, you have 15 years of experience of doing that. So that it brings a unique perspective to what we
qualification
do.
As well.
Yeah.
And this, the questions that we have for you, they're kind of geared towards that because we know you have that experience. Yeah. So, yes, I'm handing the microphone over to Jeff, and okay. Jeff.
I get to be the interviewer.
For what?
If you only knew, I've interviewed like 10,000 people in my life. My background's in staffing and sales, but I won't go into that. We'll keep it simple.
Good.
Yeah. And you can expand on whatever you want, Roger. That's fine.
Okay.
The first question's about spiritual path, and it's a very simple one. Just what is your personal understanding of spirituality?
Well, I guess for me it's seeing a bigger picture. I've always wanted to get to know people. I knew there was something deeper to life than what everybody seemed to be wrapped up in. I was never sure what it was, though, and so I never got involved in I never had too much interest in just social chit-chat, and I always wanted to get into people's hearts. And I guess I knew that there was always some kind of energy that was behind us all, and it's trusting in that beyond the daily grind, I guess. There's a lot of beauty in it, and makes your heart warm.
Well, it keeps you out of that daily grind and gets you past it, So
yeah,
I totally agree with you, because it's easy to get lost in that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, a lot of people are, but if you give it a chance, just about everybody eventually opens up to what's behind it all, and it's quite cool.
Can I ask another question, an additional question? How do you feel about divinity and God and all that, sort of in context with your journey and where you are today?
Could you repeat the first part?
Yeah, how do you feel about divinity or God, how do you feel about this today, like where you are today?
It's the main focus of my life now. divine energies that I align to, love and compassion, for example, has changed everything. And this step is good. I was reviewing it before, and it's clear in that our false self, when we're connected to our inner divinity, we can observe our false self and don't have to react, like you said. We stay in love and compassion as we can.
Did you go to church when you were younger?
Yes.
Do you feel like it's contradicting, or do you feel a resistance there with any other things that you learned about God or divinity?
Well, I had a lot of anger toward that, I guess, because I was forced to go to church, and it didn't make any sense to me. Most of masses were in Latin at that time.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody ever explained anything to me, and it was just something that kept me out of the woods and off of the river.
Uh-huh.
So
I can relate to that, yeah.
I went into, at about 16, when I was old enough to say no and make it stick, I quit church.
So now you... Oops, sorry.
I actually carried that with me into AA, then also and caused some difficulties. I wasn't open to a concept of any kind of God or religion.
So now you know that when you're in the woods or at the river, you're closer to God?
Yes, that's where I always was, connected there.
A lot of people have that, Roger. You know, we get forced into, and usually out of the intention of good, to go to those things, and a lot of times without explanation, you can get into resentment or retaliation
or fear.
Or fear, exactly. And depending on what church you went to, you know, it kind of depends on which one you're going to pick up. So, and again, there's nothing wrong with church. There's some very beautiful churches I've been to, but I know what you mean. Sometimes you got to find your own path, and it kind of sounds like what you did.
Yeah, well, today I found out I was always in the right place for it. The source energy that I believe in now is, what's behind nature and everything's existence. Mm-hmm. And what made a lot of difference to me was that I found out that it was a real energy. I'd always looked outside, waiting for something to come in and rescue me or make things better, I guess. But once I was able to learn that it was a true energy that I could bring through my heart and was there all the time, it began to change my whole life, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very cool.
Thank you.
With your AA background, what have you noticed that is missing quite a bit in many people in AA? If anything.
What's missing is the true connection to source, the ability to, or knowledge, I would say, to find that within your heart. So there's a part of what brought me into it, I guess, into the addictions was a deep longing that I always had all my life. Painful loneliness, feeling that something was missing. And I was always looking, I spent my whole life looking outside of me for that. So a lot of people in AA, although, for many, the program is perfect, but for me it was a little sticky because of that lack of connection. But they still look to outside of them for something to fix them.
Right.
They believe that everything that's going to change is dependent upon their actions. So it's since there's no true connection to a source or higher power, trust is lacking.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, even though we go through the inventory and all, and alleviate a lot of the energy around guilt and shame, for example, so we don't have to so that stuff doesn't drag us down and we can begin to heal. There's still the energetic buildup from over the years that we carry with us, so the triggers remain, and it just those kinds of things aren't healed in a lot of people. So the externalization continues. It goes into looking for an intimate relationship to solve your problems, somebody to love you, you'll love yourself, that kind of thing. It causes all kinds of problems. So.
Well, and a lot of people, and pretty much I would say anybody who's on the journey, and especially people who are truly addicted to certain things, there's an old saying that addiction occurs so either you find God or don't make it.
Yes.
Simple that it's not a God outside of
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
That comes later, but there's that little saying in many of the addiction circles that's kind of there. And I would say that's true of anybody who's in this program or who's dedicated to a spiritual path. You're here to find what's out there, like you said, and to search what's also within. So you typically, like anything in life, you go for what's outside of you and then slowly find out that it's already there.
All right.
So, the next one is about importance of community, and basically it's how important is the aspect of sharing and or communicating your inner journey, in your opinion?
It's been, real important. I do a lot of local work here, or attend a lot of energy sessions and all locally. Plus, I'm involved in AA again.
Yeah, you're also a sponsor, aren't you?
Not at this point. I was away for so long that I decided to get myself a sponsor again right away, just to take me through everything again, to refresh and prepare me.
Just for the sake of involving everyone, can you, in one sentence, explain what a sponsor is in AA or in recovery work?
Well, AA is based on the idea that we come in, our sole purpose for coming in basically is to help other alcoholics. And that's what a sponsor is. You go through the steps, coming to believe in a power greater than yourself. You do an inventory, practice prayer and meditation daily to improve your contact with whatever your higher power is. And then once you've had a spiritual awakening, as a result of that, you carry the message, basically just offer to help people, give them someone to talk to and take them through the steps so that they can learn to help others also.
Thank you. There's another question that Jeff asked, but I want to add something here real quick. We don't really advertise it, but we have integrated concepts of AA into the course. And the reason why we've done this is that all the research out there shows that in terms of not just success rate, but also real healing, of addiction. And when we talk about addiction, we're not just talking about substances. So we wanted Roger to share a little bit of this, not just because we think you guys all have an alcohol problem, because we know, well, for one, that we all have an ego problem. So and because we regard that kind of like as the same issue. But also, there are many other forms of addiction out there, or addictive structure, as we call it, that do not involve a substance at all, that just involve certain behaviors or patterns. And because we see the same patterns in people that have unhealed aspects, which is all of us, is why we chose the AA program to flow into our program, because it shows the highest rates of healing.
And the context of that energy is unconditionality, which basically means we take you as you are, and we work with whatever comes up, and we accept and understand that these patterns have been there for a long time, and that it's tough to get through them. Some of these patterns you're going to fight with inside of you for quite some time, but that's okay.
And this is where the AA concept really differentiates itself from other concepts. Maybe there are similarities like with group therapy, but this is also the reason why we stretch the sharing in the forum, the coaching. Roger is a coach here at the Sacred Self Healing. So, if you guys have a particular issue that you would like to talk about, you can book a session with Roger. It's also, the coming to the meetings here, listening, and eventually sharing yourself. Those are extremely high vibratory tools for healing. All right. So it's not just about doing all the things on our own. It is, and we have the choice to do that. But when we join a community, when we begin to open ourselves up for others, especially, of course, those who are kind of going through the same things as we are expanding our personal energy field 100-fold. And what we also don't advertise is that every step is energetically calibrated. So there is a very specific energetic dynamic behind everything, and it's way more scientific than it looks like, which we think is not important, for us to when we go through these steps. But for anyone that has ever attended a live seminar, a live meeting, or a live like one-on-one coaching session, or even just posted in the forum, there is a direct increase in the vibratory rate visible. So knowing all this from all these years of energy work that we have, we see, the AA program, where it's community-based, where it's sharing-based, as it resonates the most, and that's why we chose to integrate that.
And, ask yourself a simple question, and maybe some of you have some really cool friends you can do this with, or family members, but where can you go and openly talk or discuss your pain, your problems, anything that's bothering you, and not hear, oh, great, whatever, or dodging, or the other person goes more, they try to top you and go into their pain even worse. Here you actually just come in and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, this is what I'm struggling with, and we're like, okay, let's see what we can do to work through it. That doesn't happen very often, and that's the beauty of what a community-based program can do. Is if you have, we have many processes, there's coaching, there's training buddies, etc. Those are all in there, but just sharing that and opening up is a beauty.
Just saying it out loud sometimes.
So, and we're running out of time, so I want to real quick, and we got 12 minutes left, so if there are questions,
yes, please,
and
please
if you don't
ask questions.
And it's okay if it's not comfortable to raise your hand and talk, that's fine.
Type it
in. It took me freaking years to be able to even talk to anybody, though. I went to seminars for people that for years, and I never once talked to them. Paid thousands of dollars and never once talked to them. And then when I did, it changed. So I already had healing, but when I actually just said, hey, this is what's bugging me, it's amazing what comes up. So don't hesitate, because we're going to run out of time. So speak now or forever hold your peace, or till the next one.
Don't say it.
Or till the next seminar, or webinar, excuse me, wrong word. So please. And if not, I have one more for Roger, but I'm going to give it just a little bit of time here. Anybody?
I just wanted to make a quick comment too about the sharing the sponsorship. A lot of us, especially with addiction, are quite self-centered, so it takes your focus away from yourself and puts it to others, and that can have an immediate positive impact on your life.
Absolutely. Most of us have more access to our higher abilities when it's about listening to others or trying to just open up for others than for ourselves.
A good technique and trick that counselors and psychologists will use, and some older psychiatrists, if a person's going through depression or some type of deep emotional issue, they will make them get a pet, unless they're allergic to them. They'll say, I won't work with you until you get a pet. The reason being, not only is the research out there that shows cats and dogs are, add tremendous amounts to your life, but there's something else to care for. You're not so fixated on your drama or your pain or whatever. You actually have to take care of another being. Plants don't usually do it for people because they'll forget about it, but you can't really forget about a puppy or a kitten, so that's a huge step people will use sometimes. And like you said, it gets you out of your own stuff. It gets you out of the self-centeredness, narcissistic views that we all can go into. I mean, there's lots of things that can happen. So yes, Roger, you're dead on there. So if you want to change real quick, get a puppy. Get a cat. If you're real serious, get a kid. Just make sure you like the person. Just kidding. No, don't do that. No, I'm kidding. I have, since there nothing. Okay, nothing. All right. So I have one more question for you, Roger, and then you're off the hook.
All right.
Doing great. How do you personally understand or feel grace?
Grace is, to me, is love and compassion again. There's, I'm always drawn back to the pain or the what's underneath a person's false self in their heart, the reality there, the true feelings and all. And that brings out love and compassion for me, and that's what grace inspires. In a few words, I guess.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I mean, last meeting we talked about grace and how we don't really mean it, again, in a Christian or religious context, how we look at it as a resonance, that opens our heart and that works through love and compassion. So, yeah, you just said everything we talked about in 1 hour, in 5,000 words, in one sentence.
Well, that's what it comes down to. If you can connect with someone else, it changes a lot.
You need me to talk some more to fill up some more time?
We've got 5 minutes left. I don't know. We need to wrap up at some point. But
Roger, I want to I'm so grateful and for you for speaking here.
Yes, thank you.
I have a lot of respect for you, and I think everything you said was very inspiring and enlightening. And I also like the fact that we can make jokes together. So humor, as most people know, is a really important tool for spiritual growth. But I really appreciate you. I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for sharing this with all of us here.
Thank you both also. And I want to tell you, I had to... this has been a practice in my connection and allowing some anxiety and stuff just to be observed. Since I'm usually quite quiet, this is a big step for me. So
definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So, the concept of divine consciousness is very complex. So, we could probably talk forever, and there's thousands of books written about it, and it's been concerning humanity ever since, I guess, humans evolved in their spiritual thinking or perception. So it's not that we believe that we're offering the one solution. Our objective is to offer tools, practical tools, that allow us to apply our spiritual journey into our real lives. We don't want spirituality to just be a concept, a mental or dippy sort of idea of, spirit guides or something like that. We want to help you to carry this into your life, to integrate it, to become a better person, a better parent, a better partner, a better friend, not as in better as in like you're flawed right now, but as in more aware, more able to make this connection that Roger was talking about, to feel this deep inner compassion and love for another person and yourself, of course. That is what spiritual growth is. And where it takes place is in our practical life. It's not something that just takes place in our heads. We can spend our life exploring the mechanics of our consciousness and spiritual concepts, but until the moment we experience it and internalize it through connection with other people and ourselves. It's just a brain fart.
It's a concept, and you'll get stuck in your mind.
Yeah.
And many people do this, and we all probably are guilty of it, where you want to really try something and you just mentalize it, and that's not even a word, but you mentally take it on, and then you do nothing with it. Become active. There's a reason why you signed up for the course. Do it every day. Take time. And then you'll start to notice at first it's probably only a half hour a day, or whatever, 20 minutes, 25 minutes a day. And then all of a sudden little things will pop up, and little things will become more and more important and more prevalent. And then as you begin to let certain things go or work through things, you'll see there's more space. You'll feel more free. You'll have all of a sudden ideas pop in that weren't there before. And I would just say go for it. Every step of the way. It doesn't mean you have to take it all on at once, because that can blow you out. But if you just take on a little bit at a time, what it does is it slowly rewrites your life. And that's what true spirituality is. It's learning not only how to connect within and with others, but learning how to realign your life to that so it becomes more and more of who you are.
And just a few words here to wrap everything up as far as like practical application training, integrating and so forth. Roger does not just have a very inspiring voice and views. He also facilitates Grace Recovery, which is a transmission modality, a remote energy modality, and he also does coaching within the context of recovery, which is not just limited to substances. Again, it can also imply physical, chronic physical illnesses, or just sort of overcoming persistent ego patterns. As far as those of you who are energetically sensitive goes, there is a new series of remote energy tools that I have just started, which is called energetic adjustment sessions. Those are one-time events, and they respond to collective energy bands that are going through us. There's one tonight at 10 p.m., which is geared towards the challenges that are ahead of us right now in terms of love, self-love, and how our relationships and how it affects sort of our inner connection. So if you feel like spontaneously you would like to have an energetic adjustment session, that's on for tonight. It's a little different from our regular transmissions. There's only going to be a very short report, and then instead each and every one of you receives a personalized session summary, because I use the time during the transmission to actually go into your system and upload like a clearing sequence that allows your energetic system to hold those your own energy better and to deal with the energetic challenges of the time. And of course the subject is different every adjustment session, because the collective energies that we're dealing with are different every time. And a very last word to the timing of our meetings here. You guys are from all over the world right now, so it's really difficult to find a time that works for everyone. And I know for some of you it's like in the middle of the night, for some of you it's like early in the morning or late in the evening. So I apologize for that, but there's always going to be somebody who it feels inconvenient to. But part of overcoming our ego and dissolving ego patterns is to move, and is to allow change and do uncomfortable things, challenge ourselves and do things that are sort of out of the norm, out of what we would normally do. So personally, I've always find that very inspiring, to get up at 2 a.m. in the morning to join a meeting. So
changes your patterns.
Yes, it changes patterns, and it helps to break loose some of those rigid, energetic things that we have going on. So maybe the best thing is to change it up every single time. I need your input there. I need your guys' opinion. What the best way to proceed is. So, but the dates for the next 2 meetings are set. All right, so this is the official end of today's Sacred Self-Healing online meeting. And thank you all so much for attending. Thank you for taking the time to be here instead of watching TV or spending your time with your pet or at the river or in the woods, all equally important, and for your choice to be here instead.
Thank you very much.